Welcome to Stay Visionary Podcast. I'm your host, Ed Moran. Today we're joined by Ray Martin, founder and CEO of the Martin Agency, a high-performance real estate firm redefining how modern property deals get done. From luxury investments to global partnerships, Ray's built a brand known for speed, precision, and innovation, recently expanding with international collaborations, including Domac Properties in Dubai. We'll talk about his journey, how he's transforming real estate through technology and relationships, and what the future of property investment looks like. Let's dive in. Welcome, Ray.
Hey, Ed. Thanks for having me. My pleasure to be here. And congratulations on the podcast too, man. This is great.
Excited. These are exciting times. You are doing so much, but let's dive in. Ray, what inspired you to start the Martin Agency and build it around the high performance mindset?
I was probably about 25 years old when I bought my first multifamily house. At the time, it was more or less for a ancillary income investment diversification. And then I just really, really liked it and probably shift back a second. That was in the early 90s. And that was around the time or shortly after the time of the very first market crash. If you can remember the SNL savings crash that took everything, that was to chop the legs out. Yeah, so, I was sitting there and I'm looking at some of these multifamily houses and I'm like, well, I work, I'm working 80 hours a week as a regular job to make it, trying to get started. And I remember one in particular, it was like the asking price was like $159,000 for a 2-family, 3 bedrooms each side. And I said to the real estate agent, who was a friend of mine, and I was unlicensed at this point. And I said, well, what are the rents? And she told me, well, they get $1,100 each side, average. It's $2,200 a month. So really that much? Because, at that time, people are, mortgages, your home mortgage was $1,400, $1,500,
Right.
But, do you have the down payment or not? So I looked into the market and I'm like, why is not everybody buying these? If I can get it for $150 and even with 25% down, I'm making $1,400 a month. It seems like it's too cheap. But what it was at the time was it was too cheap, right? Because whenever there's a correction,
Right,
it doesn't stop where it's supposed to, right? It either goes too high or too low. And so, I started at the right time. I guess that would, I had a comfort level there. So I wasn't worried about making a mistake on that one. And then, I picked up another one. And then before you know it, every couple of years I'm buying one or two. And that's pretty much how I got started. And at some point, I realized I wanted to do more of it and learn more about it and keep going. Around 2000, I got my real estate license, not planning on going into the sales or brokerage business, but I started to do some math and I started to say, like, I'm buying these properties. I should be the one getting some of the commission back, right? I shouldn't leave it on, pay me for my own product. So that was kind of the thought. Now I had enough of properties, real estate, and I had a young guy that was helping me manage these properties. And I had given him a part-time job, and then we started getting a little bit bigger and bigger. And I said, we have enough of properties now where we need like an actual office. We need a place to work out of. We need a receptionist. We need computers. We need files, and we need it set up right. And then I went out and got my broker's license because I figured, now that I got an office, I'm really not focusing on brokerage as much as I'm focusing on property management and my own investments. But why not put a shingle up and sell some stuff at the same time for more income, offset some bills? And quite honestly, I looked at it the other way too. Maybe once or twice a year, a good deal comes in the door that I buy myself. So that's basically how we got started.
Giving you more access?
Yeah, giving me more access. And it was, what's more important than access is good networking. I have a extensive network of really good people that I can contact whenever I need anything. And over the years, we've built that up, and they know they can they can count on me. So this is my 37th year of being a real estate investor, and it's my 20th year being a broker. So I have a lot of networks, and we do a lot of things. And yes, I'm overseas in the Middle East now, but I have licensure here in the United States in Rhode Island, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, South Carolina, Florida, Georgia. And I stopped putting those together. It's a pain in the neck, and there's a lot of fees, and there's a lot of continuing ed, as you can imagine. And I hooked up with a friend of mine in North Carolina who does a lot of national properties, and he kind of gave me the roadmap to how to network and do referrals with the best agencies in all 50 states. So basically, I have a firm I can go work with and work through. And I always try to do the heavy lifting so they don't mind it when I call. I always make sure I don't give them a problem. I just bring them money.
That'll do it. You've managed and brokered hundreds of thousands of square feet of commercial and mixed use projects. Yeah. What guiding principles drive your approach to each deal?
From a management standpoint or from an investment purchase standpoint, or?
Give me both. Give me the investment and then the management.
So, on the investment side, I always tell everybody the numbers just need to make sense. And the numbers don't only need to make sense on this particular deal, unless it's your only real estate holding. I need to make sure how does this purchase fit into my entire portfolio? Because you don't want to buy something that absorbs too much resources from your other projects. Unless, of course, the money's there, that's just simple. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. You could be talking about breeding horses or doing real estate or whatever. If the money's there, obviously it's an easy decision to make for anybody. But so I always like to make sure there's enough of money there. It makes sense. And I always look into how much work is involved in managing each individual property. I look into how much resources, different properties have different rates of lending, different requirements, different land use requirements. Fire code could change, health code could change depending on the property. These are all things that a lot of times don't come into an investor or purchaser's mindset, which is why I always tell somebody, call me. The first phone call is free. You know what I mean? But I'll be more than happy. Like I said, I've been doing this for almost 4 decades and across 20 states now. I think I have stuff in, and all types of property from daycare to restaurants to 2-family houses to apartment buildings to mixed use. I like mixed use and luxury condos, industrial buildings, warehouses. So I kind of know all the nuances, and I may not have the answers on every single sector, but if I don't have the answers, I know who to call, and I want to make sure that I'm right. One of the things I like to sell my management and consulting and brokerage services on is what I call my executive board of directors. I'm the CEO and director of the company, but my board of directors isn't a traditional board of directors. It's my 2 real estate attorneys. It's my tax attorney. It's my CPA. It's my onboard appraisal company. It's my environmental guy. This is my board of directors, the best of the best. We get together on a regular basis and we sit at a table and we sit down. So they're my resource and I'm their resource. So if you had a question for me, Ed, you're not just getting me, you're getting the talent of all these guys.
So you're like a one-stop shop.
You answer, they will answer the phone for me. And we all work together. And because, and simply like, if it's a law question and I don't have the answer, I know they're going to answer the phone, because in 3 days they're going to email me a lease from one of their other clients, and they'll be like, have you ever seen this anyplace else? Because something's not right here. You know what I mean? So they know, and it's not that I know more than they do. It's just that, I have seen so many different deals in other states, and get so many ideas. Like, I can kind of read into it or maybe think in a different way, So we all work together, and that works for everybody. And I have proprietary lenders. I have banks, I have mortgage officers, I have mortgage companies, which are different because it's private, and I have hard money lenders. I'm here to help.
So I know you're operating in multiple states, and of course now, which we'll talk about in a little bit, overseas now in Dubai. How do you handle? Because I know every state has different regulations. Some not so bad, some a little rougher. I guess would be a nice word, depending on the state. How are you dealing with that? What are you using to negate, and so you're up to date on all those ever-changing regulations? And sometimes it's just a state, sometimes it's even the local can be challenging.
Well, I will say, on a state level, we're in Connecticut, we're in the Northeast. So if you're talking about regulations, we have more than our fair share in Connecticut than they do in Florida. You know what I mean? So in that aspect, you're kind of tuned into regulations. And you'd be surprised. You might do a deal in Georgia and you'd be like, what about the zoning on this? What are you talking about? And I'll be like, okay, I like this. I have to think about it,
Yeah.
So you have that, but really you just need to make sure you have resources, and don't forget when I take over we'll stick with Georgia, down in Cumberland, Georgia. We have a big investment in over 400 unit apartment building right outside the Atlanta Braves stadium. I don't go blind, and I don't go by myself. I am not Elon Musk in the sense that I could just buy a 400 unit apartment building by myself. I need lenders that are partners. I need attorneys that are partners in aspects. I need a local property manager down there that can advise me. And I probably need to diversify the risk with a few joint venture partners or tenants in common so you learn as you go, and and that's completely different. And all those things have their pluses and their minuses too. So that's pretty much you really have to do your homework. And after a while, and you know this just by being an interviewer, you can tell if somebody knows what they're talking about or not. So if I'm talking to a real estate broker or an attorney or a public official on something, and I'm asking questions, when they answer those questions, I know whether they know what they're talking about or if they're BSing me to get through to the answer. And once you get that feeling, you got to go get somebody else.
Yes, I think, it's intuition, and you can really tell if people are just being honest or just telling you what you want to hear.
Well, for the most part, I got to say most people in the real estate business, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's people out there that do scummy things, you know what I mean? But for the most part, if they've been around a long time, they're going to be honest. And as long as they're competent, that matters. And I'm going to backtrack on that really, really quick. Because one of the things that I've found as far as being a broker and a property manager, and you'd be surprised about this, there are so many real estate agents and brokers that are representing people and selling deals, and they're all good guys, but none of them own any of their own investment properties. Maybe they own their own house. They don't have a business. They don't have they don't know what it's like to collect the rent. They don't know how to do background checks on tenants and secure the lease. And, the lease is really, it's almost the same as a mortgage. There's some debt responsibility in there, and you have to make sure that the tenant or the leasee is capable of repaying that responsibility. And also, if it's commercial, this guy's got to have some business experience. You got to go through it. And there's guys that have been doing this for 40 years. They own nothing. They just put deals together, put it up. And some of these guys and gals, they'll bring a garbage deal to the table just because they got this offer. I'm going to digress. I had one about 2 years ago. This agent brought this deal to me and said, hey, I got an offer on that property you're trying to lease. And I looked at it. I said, are you kidding me? I said, you want my landlord to spend $60,000 and fit up, and here's the I said, my guy loses money for 20 years if he signs this lease. I have to present this offer to him, but I'm going to tell him not to accept it because I don't want to be the guy that costs it. And a lot of these guys get mad because it's all about the commission for them. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
don't care. Let's put the deal out there. If the guy, we'll show some activity. Maybe he'll sign it. Forget about it. It's
Not whether it's a good deal or it's a bad deal.
that's not going to fly with me.
It doesn't matter to them.
No. And because of that, I have clients now that are with me for a while or whatever, and I go, hey, let me see the keys. I got somebody that wants to look at the place. And, hey, how'd it go? I'll just tell them, they got the money, but he's not for you. And they'll be like, okay, whatever you say, Ray. Because over the years, I've done nothing but put the right people in their seat. I'm not there just to get that commission and say, well, how am I supposed to know?
So having integrity is everything, would you say?
Yeah, it's everything. And I can see how some brokers can remove themselves from that responsibility because they don't have experience in it. But I know firsthand what it's like to have a bad tenant. I know what it's like to chase somebody for rent. I know what it's like to make the mortgage payment without any money coming in. I know what it's like to have to do repairs because you had a bad tenant that didn't maintain the property. I know, what I mean? The guys that don't own the real estate, that are representing people that buy real estate, they just don't have the depth. And like I said, I get a lot of flack for killing deals. I get a lot of flack for killing deals, because it's not a good deal. I'm going to kill it before it fails.
Well, some will say that's a good thing.
Well, I think it's a good thing. I just,
because those things usually come back at you at a later date.
Sure.
So switching a little bit, but based on what you were just talking about with getting deals and stuff, how are you using technology, AI in particular, to really kind of streamline your system with technology changing so rapidly these days?
Yeah, and you can say rapidly, all right. I think this is going to be a bigger boom in technology than it was in 1994 when Windows came out. I think it's going to. So, personally, on a property management side, AI has moved in place a little bit already with a lot of the property management software companies. Property management software pretty much integrates accounting with a complex tenant management system where you can have all your properties, all your tenants, your tenant insurance, their payments and everything. And then all notes, communications, emails back and forth. And then that also flows into the ledger, so everything's all in one house as opposed to the old days where maybe somebody's using, I don't know, QuickBooks or something like that. But then they have another set of software where they keep all their tenant files. So it's really great. The only problem with it is it's very hard to, some companies are better than others, and it's extremely hard to change companies because, me, for instance, I might have 15 years of information and I can't switch over to new software because who's going to input that 15 years of information? You know what I mean? I don't want to lose it,
Absolutely.
So that's one of the things. But every company now has AI add-ons. And, if you have vacancies, AI will write a listing for an advertisement. AI will write because of the weather today, your freeze warning letters. You know what I mean? That we like to say. Every year we get frozen pipes that thaw out one day and we have floods, happens no matter how many, but we do send the warnings out to hopefully limit that stuff. And, AI really contributes a lot to that. We're waiting for growth in the real estate investment segment to help value properties. I have my own software that I've been using for years, and it's a pretty complex financial software that we wrote with help. And I can project income from year 1 all the way out to year 20. We can project into that, your rate of return. based on the sale of the property within the first 3 years. What's the right hold date? When's your depreciation goal? What's your next move? But it's all manually inputted. I'm waiting right now. The big firms, obviously, the $1 billion real estate companies, or the Fellner groups that have shopping centers from coast to coast, they have all this software. You know what I mean? Everybody I know that works there, they have access to this stuff. However, it's not in my budget to spend $10 million on software. You know what I mean?
Not yet, Ray. Not yet.
Yeah, not yet. We're getting there, maybe. But I mean, these guys have that stuff, but all that stuff trickles down to us eventually.
Absolutely.
It trickles down. So it's
absolutely.
As far as that kind of analysis, it's you still kind of got to do that yourself. Absolutely. However, the AI tools are great because it's always self-learning, and the database is so big. If your real estate AI software, if you ask a question or you're looking to come up with something, it's learning from not just here in Connecticut, Florida, maybe California, Texas. It's all this stuff is coming together, and that's one of the great advantages of it, I think. And I've always, I know we're going to talk about the Middle East in a minute, but wherever I go, I always try to learn something that I can apply in a different market to get ahead of everybody else.
Do you feel with the AI changing so rapidly, and from my interviews and talking to people all across the country, wouldn't you agree it is really leveling the playing field from a smaller business to some of the, maybe not even, but it is definitely elevated the abilities of some smaller businesses?
I think because this new technology is surging, right? It's surging. I don't think I can keep up with it, and most people can't, unless, you have a multinational company with, thousands of employees. You're not at the cusp. But as it comes down, it might not be leveling, but it's definitely educating everybody. There's an expansion of knowledge across the spectrum, and it's elevating everybody else. So I think that's a really good thing. It's a really good thing.
So you started talking about it. Please talk about your partnership overseas and the business over there and how that is evolving.
Originally, I had a friend of mine, good friend of mine, and he's from Turkey, but he owned 3 investment properties in Dubai. And he talked about it enough and gave me a lot of details about the appreciation, about the investor-friendly regulations and laws, which, you have to have if you're going to be. Dubai is the United Emirates, it's a place where they're trying to attract the world money into one spot. And you're not going to get people from around the world to invest, live, and grow and have businesses in a place unless your regulations are friendlier than the country they're from. It's just not going to happen. So that's what it is. So I went out there, and I loved what I saw. I a little hesitant at first. You know what I mean? Was I'm an American in the Middle East. How am I going to be accepted?
Yes.
And everybody could tell I was an American really quick. They have a good knack for that. It's probably the flags on my clothes, but so next thing you know, I made a couple appointments. I met a really good friend. She became a great friend of mine, Manel, and she is a upper level broker for Damak Properties, which is one of the larger development companies in Dubai. And I bought a high rise, and I kept it empty for about a year because my thought was to kind of do what I have a place in Miami, and I thought, I want to go. I want a place whenever I want to go, I can go. But the the time is a little different. You know what I mean? It's such a long trip. When you get there, you don't want to do any of your own meal preps or anything like that. You know what I mean? It's a different animal. So we leased it out, and matter of fact, we leased that one out last year. It's coming due, and we're leasing it out again this year. The market appreciation is going up. I'm a little outside the growth zone there, so I didn't do as good as some of my other investments on that one. But it's better than anything here. And to give you an example, I was either going to buy this, or there was a 5-bedroom villa on a man-made lake in a private community with a carport and the whole, and I kind of really like that. I bought the high rise because that's what I have in Miami, and I kind of like that life.
Yeah.
But and the villa was expensive. It was expensive, but I thought, if I buy this villa, my kids can come, my grandkids can come. I could have a place,
Absolutely.
But I didn't. I didn't buy it, and I didn't buy it because it was $6.7 million at the time, and that wasn't going to be my first purchase there by a long shot, and that would have been up to here. I would have been, but I should have bought it and struggled through it because 2 years later it just sold for $14.5 million. That would have been a nice.
Wow.
Right. So that's and I don't have that kind of gain on the other property. But
so that's the kind of stuff that's happening over there in Dubai?
Yeah, but it's even more than that, and I'll go into my business over there with my partner in a minute, but the regulations are great. The rates of returns are great. There's almost you almost can't make a mistake. You know what I mean? It's like, if you're doing bad over there, you're still doing what you would consider okay over here. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And from a investor's landlord standpoint, the government and the regulations are all on your side. And that's how they're growing the country. It's the banking system, it's real estate investment, and it's business investment and tourism. They don't even care about oil anymore. That's in Abu Dhabi. And they're just doing a fantastic job. But, if my tenant, the different things too, when you rent out your property, you can rent it out in 4 checks a year, 2 checks a year, or 1 check a year. I was fortunate enough to get 1 check at the beginning of the term for the whole year.
Wow. That's different.
Big difference that way, right? From a management standpoint. The other standpoint is conditions. Whenever your tenant vacates a property, there's usually some adjustment to a security deposit or something like that. Yes, there's a security deposit over there. Standard is 1 month. I complained about that on my first deal. I'm like, 1 month, this is a nice place, they break the refrigerator and I'm negative, and what I found out is that doesn't matter over there, because whatever, any damages you put on paper, you bring it to your tenant, and if they sign it, and they got 5 days to pay you, or you get to call the police. If they don't sign it, you give them 3 days, and the police will come and ask them why they're not signing it. And if there's a dispute, you try to remedy it, applicably. And the rule of thumb over there is, how we have like normal wear and tear here? Like if you move out and, all right, the wall's got to get painted, or, we wore out the carpet a little bit in one spot. You know what I mean? Normal wear and tear, which you can't collect over here. Oh, it's not like that over there. They have to return it to you in the exact condition you gave it to them in. Even if they've been living in it for 6 years and it needs a new carpet, they're putting the carpet in. And the judge will make them do it. And that's one of the reasons it's a strong investment capital. And I've learned a lot of this stuff because, and I'm sorry, I don't want to take over the interview. Just, ask me your questions. But
this is good stuff.
I had some legal questions. I met an attorney out there, and his name is Mahmoud Mazouk. He's Egyptian. He has a law office in Egypt. He has a law office in Dubai and another one in Turkey. And we are now business partners in the Martin Agency. of the Middle East. And his law firm's name is Rashad bin Arab Group. And I work out of his office. And if you ever follow my Facebook, I usually put pictures of these guys up there. They love that stuff. They just love it. They just love it.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah. They advertise a little different over there. I'll get like a Facebook post and be like, is this good? And I'm like, listen, whatever works over there, you do. I don't want to put my American perspective on it. But what we do, so he's the legal consultant and I'm the real estate consultant. And we work together in two ways. We invite people from the United States or the West to invest in the Middle East. And it could be Egypt, Turkey, UAE, doesn't matter. We find the properties. We have brokers that we rely on. We have property managers, bankers. There's actually not a lot of mortgages over there. I'm the only idiot with a mortgage over there. Everybody else just pays cash, So we do that. We bring U.S. dollars into the Middle East for select clients we got a questionnaire everybody's got to fill out to make sure they're a qualified investor, and it works the other way too. There's a lot of folks in the Middle East, Saudis, Egyptians, and the United Arab Emirates is a unique country in the fact that there's very few Emiratis. Those are the naturalized citizens. It's very rare to find somebody that actually holds a passport from the UAE. There's 170 different countries represented there. And That's one of the best things about it. I have Filipino friends, Egyptian friends, Turkish friends, Pakistani, South African people. Everybody's there on the same level, doing the same thing, working together. So a lot of those folks want America in a different way than you think. It's not because they think it's an investment or that they want to live here. They like to visit. They don't like to give up the safety and the quality of food they have over there, but they like to visit. But they like properties. They like agricultural properties. They want earth. They want farmlands. They want to have real estate in South Dakota, somewhere near any historical cowboy town or something like that. That's what they like. And they also like they like Miami. They like Miami, which works good for me. They like New York, but they don't invest in New York. New York is something like it's a bucket list thing for a lot of those folks.
I can imagine.
Yeah. It's when my partner came to visit me in August, I said, well, we're going to spend a couple of days together, but I'm going to leave you alone for some family time in the beginning. Here, go to the zoo, whatever. He goes, I want to go to the Statue of Liberty, and that kind of took me back a little bit because as an American, that I think that means something. But I wouldn't think, what do you care about this? That's what I'm thinking. What do you care about the Statue of Liberty? It's like, how's that fallen? But it means a lot to them. And what means a lot to them as well is nobody over there is really political, believe it or not. And if they are, they keep it to themselves. But what they like about the United States, what they like about America, even if they're in disagreement with whatever administration we have now or 4 years ago or whatever, it doesn't matter. They like our history. They like the fact that America stood up to the world superpower and became the first democracy. They like that story. That's where the desire comes in.
That's actually good to hear.
Yeah.
This kind of brings me, with now you're in Dubai, you're all across the U.S. What is your biggest pain point that you have right now in the Martin Agency?
I don't have enough of qualified partners and employees. And I think it's a Connecticut problem. I think it's trying to work around it. I'm a Stratford boy, right? I live in Connecticut. Everybody I know is here. I need to stay. All my connections are here. I mean, I have other ones, but I have other, these are great friends I have in the Middle East. I got great friends down in Miami, but they're not lifelong friends. I didn't go to kindergarten with them.
There's a difference.
There's a big difference if somebody calls you, So, and my sons are at the age where they're, Jake is working with me and he's doing well. And he graduated college. My son Raymond, he's finishing up his master's. I got to make sure these guys are all worked into my network. You know what I mean? They need to rely on that. Just like, I got my dad's and now they're going to get mine. And so that's the thing. And one of the things I like about the Middle East is, Ed, you could set up a podcast station there tomorrow.
Hmm.
You'll have 5 people that want to be your assistant. You'll have 2 more people that want to do all the work for you. They'll do it for a fair wage. They don't deserve any. They don't feel like they deserve anything but an opportunity, and they will work hard. And they probably have at least 2 degrees. So
There's not entitlement.
educated, they're hardworking. I look around, and we do have a plan to open up a couple businesses over there as well, and it's just so easy. And the nice thing about it is, from an accounting standpoint with technology, there's very little cash in the system there. Believe it or not, I like to keep dirhams, which is their currency, on me when I'm there, because I'm even and they don't tipping's not required there, but I'm gonna tip the cab driver. You know what I mean? I'm gonna tip the bellhop. I'm gonna,
I think that is a highly American thing.
for it. But you know what I mean? It's like, hey, thanks, here you go, and they appreciate it. Like, once you have a visa there, I mean, I can go into a convenience store. I can go in and get a karat tea and a burrata, whatever else, and go to the counter and just look into the machine, and it charges my bank account, and I walk out the door.
Yeah, that's amazing technology.
And everything else is, and it's fun. It's funny too. If you want to, like, we're eliminating the penny out of circulation here in America, right? Because, quite frankly, like, who cares about a penny, right? Especially when they cost us more than a penny to make, right?
Yeah.
So, but over there, they actually have, pennies. They have, I don't know if they have nickels, but I've seen dimes and quarters. And their one dirham is not paper money; it's a coin. The 1 dirham coin is the only one you ever get. Everything else just gets rounded up or down. Very rare that you see anything else, and that equates to about 27 cents American. So everything's rounded to the nearest 27 cents.
Okay.
And nobody complains about it. It's a different world. Yeah, it's a different world.
So let me ask you, where is the Martin agency going in the next 6 months to a year?
So what I'm trying to do now is I'm vertically integrating the real estate office, and I'm looking for gaps, and found I have a partner down in Boca, and I went through his office with him and saw a lot of things. So I'm going to bring in a commercial and investment mortgage company into my office. So we can have an underwriter in here, so we can integrate that. And then this way, if you come to me and you say, "Hey, Ray, I want to buy a 3-family house," so even if you're just starting, let's forget about a 20-unit apartment building right now. Let's forget about that. So I can bring you through the steps. We can find the property. You get great service. You get professional insight on the investment to start with, right? And then I bring my appraiser in, and now if I have a mortgage guy, he steps in, and now I have my closing attorney from my network that comes into the equation, and I have my tax accountant, just in case there's something that's going on. I don't know where the money came from or where it's going. We make sure you're set up, pay all the taxes you're supposed to pay, but not a penny more than you should. That's how we do it. But by providing all of those services, we can discount every single one of those services, because we're getting a little taste off of each one. So it's good for the client. So your overall cost is less, and my office is being more productive and more busy and giving us more access to more clients. So that's one of the things we're going to try to do. We want to make sure we want to keep it. The more we can keep in-house, the better control and the better communication we have, and the lower the cost to the client. And that works the same way for property management. The more stuff I can keep in-house, the more 1099 contractors that I have that do repairs, the more bookkeepers I have that run. So property management, can I talk about that for a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a weird thing. Property management, every major market in the country, whether it's New York or Miami, it could be Chicago, it just came back. It's comprehensive. You're doing lease audits, you're renting out the property, you're administrating repairs, you're preparing financial documents, you're doing rent collections, you're ACHing funds to the different owners. You're doing an eviction for on a bad tenant. and you're showing up in court and you're coordinating that with the attorney. You're doing everything on that as well as planning the future of that particular investment, especially if it's something like a mixed use building and you have some apartments and some stores you want to, okay, when this guy's lease is up at that store, we could really use a restaurant here because we have so many people that would eat in there, create value, bring a national tenant. We do all that. Now in Connecticut, if you Google property managers in Connecticut, you're going to find that property management to the people in Connecticut mean repair and maintenance. That's it. So I try to say I'm a real estate manager instead of a property manager because I'm trying to make a distinction that, like, I just don't make sure your parking lot gets plowed in the winter. We
There's a lot more to it.
Advise you across the board in every aspect we can on your entire investment.
Mm-hmm.
And and we can do this because we do this for our own properties. Again, you know what I mean? And you'd be surprised how many property managers don't own properties. They know how to do repairs and they have contracts to plow snow or to mow grass. And that's all great. But one of my biggest things is I really have trouble expressing that to get new clients in Connecticut. Unless we're talking about a downtown Bridgeport office building or something like that that's owned by, a group out of New York. They know exactly what they're doing, But, there's a lot of shopping centers near us, right? On Route 8 in Shelton, that type of thing. They got a lot of property managers there. All they're doing is cutting grass and plowing snow. They're not part of the actual team that handles the investment.
I love how you've put together and you're in the process of even better. You're constantly improving how a one-shop stop. So when a potential client comes to you, you have your full service,
If somebody comes in my door, whether they're looking to sell their real estate, whether they're looking to buy more real estate, and we get to know their needs, they automatically get everybody that's on my executive team, and that's what we try to do. I mean, I can give you a great example, which would have probably never happened in anybody else's office. I had a friend and a client, and he lived in Stratford, but he had 3 multifamily houses in Bridgeport, all next to each other. He accumulated them over time. And he came to me in the office, and I met with him and one of my sales guys because he says, I want to sell my properties. I said, all right, meet so-and-so. He's the point guy, but I'm always there. I'm just not going to be walking through the property showing it to 100 times, And we went through the numbers. Am I still in the screen?
Yeah, you're. Yeah.
So we went through the numbers, and I told him. I said, he goes, "What do you think?" And he goes, "Will I clear 600,000 after I sell it?" And I said, "Yeah, but you got a bigger problem than that." And I says, "You have to recapture 20 years of depreciation that you wrote off at 30%. You have to also pay your capital gains tax on the increased value." I says, "You are going to pay somewhere around $230,000 in taxes out of the 600. I recommend you don't sell them." and I says, "I really don't." Meanwhile, my sales guy is like having a heart attack because he's like, "You're talking about selling these?" You know what I mean? Because that's his livelihood.
Yeah.
But what happened was he was sophisticated enough where I introduced him to my 1031 exchange intermediary, who's also on my executive team. And for everybody that doesn't know what that is, in real estate, if you sell property and reinvest that money into a new property, as long as you never touch the proceeds, as long as the money's always escrowed by an exchange intermediary, you avoid all taxes from depreciation, recapturing, capital gains, everything. Zero tax scenario. So and it scares a lot of people. It actually scares a lot of attorneys and accountants because it's a really complicated law. But my guy is the tax code is this big. This is how he explained it to me the other day. But he concentrates on this one spot in the tax code that him and his team are just the absolute best at. So what happened was, and this is a great story, this is what people should have. So we sold these houses in Bridgeport, and we sold them for about 800 and something thousand, ballpark, I don't remember. And instead of paying over $250,000 in taxes, I'll go back. So what he was earning on these 3 multifamily houses, and I want to go back, I think it was 2 2-families and 1 3-family, now that I think about it. He after expenses and everything else, he was getting like 48 grand a year that he was paying tax on too, not bad, but we saved him. So we saved him, he sold them. We saved him $250,000 in real estate taxes. He invested all his money into a Dollar General in Minnesota, that even though it wasn't densely populated, this was a newer property. It was a triple net lease. It was near an Indian casino. And a triple net lease means the tenant pays everything. You don't plow the snow. You don't, everything. And you get your check and they take care of everything. And he went from 40 something thousand dollars a year to 80 something thousand dollars a year. And he was able to increase his depreciation through a cost segregation analysis to front load the depreciation from 40 years to like 15 years. So he's not paying any income tax on that $80,000 for the first 6 years.
That's amazing.
He sends me a Christmas card every year. So that's what we do for people.
I'd send you a little more than that, but that's just me.
No, but no, that's so yeah. That's what we do. And we still ended up selling the houses for the guy, and he appreciated it, and now his son's a client of mine because he knows where to go.
And that's a lesson in how you do business.
It's 100% how you do it. It's, why, and the greatest thing about this is, I don't want to give out too much information because I don't have his permission, but this particular guy, he immigrated to our country from a communist country with his mother when he was like 8 years old. This whole transaction got published because they were trying to take this 1031 law off the books. Word was this is just a loophole for rich folks, to not pay taxes. And this guy is a municipal employee, immigrated, hard work ethic, the whole 9 yards, right?
Yep.
Boom, boom, boom. So the intermediary that we used was from New York, so he had a lot of exposure. His story ended up getting published on the front page of the Wall Street Journal.
Excellent.
And the part that's making me choked up right now is I got a call from his mother, who was just so proud of her son coming from communism to the front page of the Wall Street Journal. This is getting a little.
Yeah.
So these are the things, and you can't replace that. Forget about doing good.
Yeah. Some things when you're helping people like that, it's so gratifying, but it just speaks in volumes to who you are and really how
I appreciate that.
Your business is.
But so I think, when you're in business and if you have long-term goals, you try to do the right thing and you try to do right by everybody. You just don't expect it back. Otherwise you'll be disappointed. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people that don't think that way, but you don't let that bother you. You just do the right thing and
eventually it comes back to you. It
does,
will.
You know what I mean? And the fact that he's doing so well and his kids doing, but I mean, the fact that his mother, who I, met once prior, she got my phone number and she called me, that just means everything to me. You know what I mean? That just means everything to me.
So one last thing I want to ask you, is there anything going on right now or coming up in the future that you would like to promote?
In the Northeast, in Connecticut, in New York, where it's affordable. There's been a lot of, I like to change that language, because a lot of what we do down in Florida is workforce housing. And some of that we partner up with companies like Cardheart. You can imagine, Sikorsky, those guys do pretty good up here. So that's probably a bad example. But so you can, workforce housing, cops, nurses, firemen, things like that. There's not a lot of cops that work in Darien that can afford to live in Darien. That's kind of the concept. So I don't like to call it affordable housing. And there's a couple new bills being presented to the state by a couple smart guys to change the 830G affordable housing language into this affordable housing language, which I think is good for a couple reasons. One, it kind of puts the municipality and the neighbors at a property a little more settled down, because when they hear affordable housing, first thing they worry about is their property values going down or something like that, workforce housing kind of, why shouldn't the cop or the teacher live in the town that she gets paid in? She should spend their money in that same place. You get paid, spend your money here, buy your housing here. It's good. It's good for the grand list. It's good for the economics of the town. So there's a lot moving forward in that respect. And there's also a lot of good things not moving forward with that kind of legislation, because just like anything else, there's some weak points in there. And if the wrong developer gets his hands on it, he can exploit some of these weak points as far as parking goes, density goes, construction quality, things like that. And you just got to know who's doing the development. I think it's just as important as the development itself. But there's room for that stuff, and we lost a lot of housing during COVID because a lot of folks left New York, and I think more folks are going to keep leaving New York as it gets too expensive. So there's a venue for that, and Fairfield hasn't met their moratorium yet. Well, they have on paper, but there's a moratorium on affordable housing once a community reaches 10% of its housing market reaches as affordable. But the catch in that law is it has to be completed and occupied. Until then, you can keep putting applications in. So that's why there's been a flood in Fairfield. But I'm going to say this, there's a couple good ones also coming up in Fairfield in really good locations and really good neighborhoods, and taking a lot of care in making sure it's done to protect the municipality and the neighbors that have been pre-existing there for 20, 30 years, So I mean, that's, as far as Connecticut goes, it's going to be workforce housing and apartments. And probably you're also going to see some development in cluster homes and things like that as well, where, if you go down south, it's like, they got these HOA communities with single family houses in it. You're going to see more of that as well. But on a national basis, I'll leave you with this because I know we're running out of time. The number one apartment use is now senior apartments, 55 and older apartments. And you might think that's a little strange, but here's the difference.
It makes sense, actually.
Well, when you think of, so I'm over 55, so I fall into that category, right? But I'm also not my dad's generation, My dad's generation is never going to rent because they always thought that was throwing money away. My generation is, do I sell my house and rent and move to South Carolina because my son's there with his family and my grandkids? And then maybe my other son is in Wyoming. Maybe I'm going to go live there for a year. Maybe, maybe I don't want, maybe at this juncture where my personal residence equity needs to get taken off the table and put into a stock market that just keeps going up, and it's less expensive for me to rent than to own. Our generation is a little bit more savvy when it comes to stuff like that.
All right.
Everybody, your personal residence is not an investment. Don't ever think of it as one. It's negative cash flow every month. It's not like owning investment real estate. All the maintenance and upkeep and taxes are on you. Whereas if you're renting, you're paying a rent, and the landlord is taking care of the property, the repairs, the maintenance, the real estate taxes, probably the water. So you have, if you look at it that way, instead of paying real estate's expensive now. So instead of paying a $5,000 mortgage, taxes and insurance included, you're paying a $3,000 rent. You got $2,000 a month that you're not spending on expense. You can invest it in the market. You can do whatever you want with it. And you probably just took, who knows? Everybody's got a lot of equity in their personal home now. Now you don't have 300, 400, 500,000 tied up.
Okay.
Now you got freedom. That's kind of where these senior apartments and complexes are going.
That's some great information, Ray.
And this is a great interview. I had a lot of fun, Ed.
Ray, thank you for sharing your journey and giving us a glimpse into what high performance real estate really looks like in a global tech-driven world. For everyone listening, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share the Stay Visionary podcast. And as always, stay visionary.